Joining me now from Washington, D.C., former Assistant Secretary of State under the Reagan and Bush 41 administrations, spokesman for the Association of Mature American Citizens, AMAC, Robert Charles. Robert, I want to talk about these liberal governors and how they're reacting to Corona, but first, AMAC. Obviously, the vast majority of your clientele is over the age of 60. You must be giving guidance. Is the guidance that you're giving on Corona lining up more or less with the guidance that the federal government is giving?
I think I can say yes, almost exactly. As you mentioned, AMAC represents more than 2.1 million Americans of a conservative flavor, and they're all over the age of 50. And I think really most of them would subscribe to what the president has suggested, which is prudence and caution and wisdom, but not overreaction. And you know, to be honest, this virus, just to speak about it for a moment, and I've spent a lot of time because of the relationship with AMAC looking at the medical literature. I'm not a doctor, I'm a lawyer, but having looked at it from a policy perspective, you know, there are 4 coronaviruses that have been in circulation for an awful long time. We discovered 2 of them in the 1960s. I think they're 229E and OC43. And these viruses basically create the common cold. And then we discovered 2 more in the early 2000s, and they came out of looking at SARS. What happens is that these viruses generally become endemic. They're not life-threatening any more than any other common virus is. And but so what I think you're pointing out here in the blue states, and what I would completely agree with you on, is that instead of exercising caution and allowing individuals to make good, well-informed, personally driven decisions, the same way we do about the common cold and getting a flu shot, we don't mandate that. We encourage people to make the right choice, but we leave it to them. And instead, these blue states are pushing the direction of panic, I was fascinated to hear New York's governor step up and say that he was not going to encourage calm. That he called it reality when he talked about what seems to mean near panic. That is not where this goes. Ultimately, this has a silver lining, and the silver lining is that this virus will either die out with warm weather in the next few weeks or so, right, or it will become endemic like a cold virus.
Know your risk, know your circumstances. This is the message from, I believe, from AMAC as well as the federal government. In other words, know your age, right, and know if you have an underlying illness, and then take appropriate measures. And oh, by the way, wash your hands a lot. I've never seen anything like this, Robert. To me, this is a combination of the panic, the pre-panic from Y2K that turned out to be nothing, kind of merged with post 9/11, how so many Americans were frozen and didn't want to go on with life, merged with what happened in 2008, 2009 during the stock market panic, which, by the way, was government-induced. That's the way the history books should be written. I don't know that they are being written that way, but that whole crisis in 2008, 2009 was caused by the federal government. Why don't we, I hear people in this country saying, why don't we do what China did? Well, the answer is because we're free, because we have liberty, because we do not live in a totalitarian society. They can seal off their country. We have this thing called mobility. It's what the framers of the Constitution gave us.
That's right. We have in the First Amendment, it's not just free speech and freedom of religion, it's actually also freedom of assembly, which means freedom to go where you want to go. You know, I would say that the confluence of events, and I don't disagree with you that those other events strongly influence the way we're reacting to this, but it's really the confluence of several things. First, I think that the Democrats in particular were looking for some excuse to get upset and maybe find some silver lining of their own and hold it against Trump. So this is, I think the New York Times called it a Trump virus. So that's one factor. Second factor is social media spreads things far too quickly, creates the kind of hysteria that we do not need. The third is that you actually have people in the mainstream media that I think would like to see at least I'm not suggesting they wish badly on America, but I think that they might like to see a recession that bumps the president sideways. And I think that's kind of a silver lining here is remarkable. 2 very, very big things. One, there was going to be a market correction here at some point, with or without the oil price and the coronavirus. The fact that it's happening here in March instead of October might be a good thing, because by that time, I think the markets are going to surge again. And the final piece of it is we needed to decouple from China. The president has said this from the beginning of his campaign, and if there was any exclamation point or dot on the point that proves the president's suspicion of China. This is it.
Yep.
They have been untruthful. They were behind this Wuhan virus. And at the end of the day, I think it validates the idea of bilateral relationships and what the president's doing.
Great analysis. In the meantime, I can't find any toilet paper. Because of this crazy hoarding that's going on there. But I'm very concerned about these governors because when you step back and you look at it, freedom of assembly, they're attacking that right now. And, of course, because of that, freedom of religion. 2/5 of the First Amendment under attack in these blue states, something to consider very, very deeply during this process. Robert, thank you.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.